Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
our friend, beloved God,
our friend, beloved God,
great masters,
great masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
and our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
all saints and sages.
all saints and sages.
Lovingly we bow before you all.
Lovingly we bow before you all.
We open our hearts and minds
We open our hearts and minds
to receive your guidance,
to receive your guidance,
your inspiration,
your inspiration,
your divine love and peace.
your divine love and peace.
We are your children.
We are your children.
Receive us
Receive us
on thy lap of infinity.
on thy lap of infinity.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Let me turn my WhatsApp off so we don't wait.
Can we turn it up a
Good evening, everyone. Whoever is with us this evening, for both of you to know, these are primarily or only disciples and Kriyabans. And many of them met you when you were here last year, was it? Or how long have you been?
It's been a year and a half, I guess, about, yeah.
A year and a half. But for those of you who do not know, Swami's Dharmadas and Nirmala, they are currently the spiritual directors of our community in Sacramento, Ananda Sacramento. And prior to that, they were in fact the spiritual directors of Ananda in India. And two of Narayani and my closest friends and mentors in our early journey as we came as young brahmacharis, and have been holding our hands, and a lot of what we give, hopefully give you these days, we have received from them. And they're also two of Swami Kriyananda's oldest and dearest friends, so it's a great pleasure and a privilege for us to have them. So welcome, Dharmadas.
Thank you all. Thank you.
It's a blessing to be here with you.
The blessing and a joy.
Most of the things I learned how to serve Swamiji really came by just watching Nirmala. It was just like my role model in so many ways. So anyway, you really shaped me in how to behave properly. So thank you for that.
Well, it's very sweet.
So what we've been doing, we've already had satsang similar to this with Jyotish and Devi and Asha, and our hope has been twofold. One, to really help define discipleship in as many different ways as possible from different perspectives, and two, also for all our people to get to know all of you, who perhaps they may or may not meet as often. And it's like many of us are missing, Swami Kriyananda's presence, but many of you represent that presence for us now, having both imbibed it, learned from it, vibrationally received so much from him. So we want to kind of bring the two together. One, people get to know you personally, your journey, your process, and two, kind of bring discipleship as the core central reality of who we are, beyond even technique, beyond everything that we do. And so what we've done, we shared with you those 4 questions, and so we'll kind of weave them into a conversation of sorts.
And if someone sometimes asks something specific related to your story, Swamiji, or something, we will let you know. But so far, we'll just create this flow.
You can ask us from the chat, because the computer's far enough away that we have to sort of get up and go there and
Looking at it.
yeah.
Looking at it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so our first question essentially is, where in your own spiritual journey, what inspired or what brought on the concept of discipleship? Where did you decide? All of us start with saying, okay, I want to live a spiritual life, but not for everyone is discipleship the first idea. Where and how do you feel discipleship entered as without this, I won't be able to do anything?
Well, I was really desperate, and growing up in middle-class America where we had anything and everything and materialism was not an issue, I was very disappointed in materialism, and I wanted something more. And growing up and being a teenager, I was very depressed about the state of the world and animal species going extinct and pollution and overpopulation and all these terrible problems that nobody seemed to care about. I was very discouraged and increasingly desperate. I was living in Los Angeles after college, and a friend handed me Autobiography of a Yogi. And I opened it up, I read one passage, and I closed it and gave it back. That's not for me. And then the same friend took me to Lake Shrine, and I fell in love with Lake Shrine. So I went there whenever I could. And the people in orange with the big bouffant hairstyles, I was scared to death of them. I just didn't want anything to do with them. But I didn't know about meditation at all. But I would find a quiet little hidden place and sit and be very still and be very quiet. And it was a lifeline for me. Then I traveled with a friend, and she and I camped in 29 Palms in the desert. I don't remember now quite the distance but I know it was Joshua Tree and 29 Palms. So we spent 2 weeks just being quiet in the desert, and then we traveled all over the country. And at one point, we picked up a hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker had a magazine. And I said, "Can I see your magazine?" I opened it right up to a community based on yoga principles. I didn't have time to read the article. I just memorized 900 Allegheny Star Route, which was Ananda's address in those days. Such a beautiful address. And I went directly there. In fact, my friend, I was very young at the time and didn't mind hitchhiking. And I never told my parents that I did that. But my friend took me as far as Salt Lake City. And it was summertime.
Which, for reference, Salt Lake City is about 1,000 kilometers away
From Ananda.
from Ananda.
So it was summertime. We had the windows rolled down, and I leaned out of my window because there was a car with 2 girls in it stopped next to us. And I said, "So where are you guys going?" And they said, "Nevada City, California." And I said, "Can I get a ride with you?" And so that's how I came to Ananda. And when I got to Ananda, the first thing that happened is someone gave me Autobiography of a Yogi. And I felt like, this master is chasing me. So that time I read it in just 2 days, nonstop. And very soon after that, discipleship was offered. And I knew I was brand new to the path. I knew that my life could change through the years, that I couldn't predict what would happen. It was a real leap of faith to take discipleship, but I knew I was desperate, and this is what God was giving me. And so I took it like a lifeline. I just had to take a leap of faith, and I have never regretted that decision. And as Swami used to say, you know, we can have all kinds of accomplishments, we can be successful in all kinds of ways, we can have all kinds of outward things, but what really defines us and what really makes us unique is that we are disciples of a great master, Paramahansa Yogananda. So that's who we really are. Everything else is totally superficial.
For me, the concept of discipleship as an initiation actually wasn't really offered per se when I came. Kriya was discipleship, and so everything was leading towards Kriya. Now there was a sense that you had to have inside that Yogananda is my guru and that this is my path. And for me, in a way, those decisions were made even before I came to Ananda, just because I had had an extremely powerful experience just from reading Swamiji's book, The Path, which is now called The New Path. Is it in Hindi? I think it, yeah. Well, it's, you know, in whatever language it's in, it's an incredible book. I've been reading some of it recently again. But the concept, you know, the separate initiation into discipleship didn't come until later in my memory. And I knew this was my path on some level, but the emphasis at that time was on getting to know Master's teachings, sort of getting to understand what is this, does it feel like your own? And those themes are still the same even today. Swamiji was growing into his own role as a representative of Master because he was very, you know, he had come up through SRF, and in SRF, it's just about the lessons and it's about the guru there on the altar. It's not, there are no intermediaries. And so he was very kind of hesitant initially. I had a funny experience around this once. At that time, it was a requirement to join SRF to be a member of Ananda. So you had to take the lessons and sort of go through this whole thing. And so SRF was chasing all of us who were doing that to get Kriya. And some people actually went down there and took Kriya. They had taken it from Swami. They would take it from, sometimes they took it from SRF first, then they took it from Swami. I mean, it just sort of seemed like, well, you know, it's all one thing, it's all good, whatever. So, you know, after a year or two of them chasing me, I thought, well, all right, other people have gone, maybe I should go down there too. So I signed up for a Kriya, and Devarshi, as it happened, he and I traveled together to Southern California to do this initiation. You know, we even flew down there and rented a car. I mean, this was like pretty hoity-toity, you know, for two young monks. I mean, this was pretty hot stuff. And we stayed with a devotee down there overnight. And in the morning, we had a nice long meditation. This was going to be the day of my initiation with them. I had already had it from Swami once or even twice. I don't remember. I spread out the map after the sadhana, and I started trying to figure out, okay, where is this place that we're supposed to go? And I couldn't find it. And it was like, wait a minute.
This is the early 80s.
Yeah, we didn't have Google. We didn't have, you know,
anything.
Google Maps, nothing. And I finally flipped the map over, showing the entire state of California instead of just the zoom of Southern California. And I realized that where I was supposed to go was back where we had come from, which was Northern California. And it was like, oh God. So anyway, I thought, all right, Divine Mother. And then years later, or some time later, I remembered that I had mentioned to Swamiji that I was planning to do this. And he didn't say anything. But it was one of those, he didn't say anything very loudly. and I remembered that later. And it was like, oh, you've had initiation. You don't need more initiation. You had it once and it was, where it was supposed to come from. End of story. And of course, I've had many initiations from Jyotish, from others, down through the years.
But it's all been Ananda. And it's all from that particular ray. And so those things do matter. And I felt on a very, very deep level a connection with Swamiji, even months prior to coming to Ananda. So that part was already in there. But, I came to Ananda kind of subconsciously yearning for this. We all read Autobiography of a Yogi, and we read Sri Yukteswar and Master meeting. And Sri Yukteswar, Shurjo, maybe you know the Bengali, how you say, my own, you have come to me, over and over. Okay, well, anyway, we all sort of yearn for that, my own, you have come to me. And, for me, my first glimpse of Swami, he's waving out the window of a car and I'm 100 meters away and he's on his way to Europe for 3 months on a lecture tour. That was my first glimpse of Swami Kriyananda. It was like, there was a certain message in this. You're going to travel, deal with it. It's like, serve however God gives it to you. So anyway, it took a long time for that more personal side to come up. And I just had to grow up. There was a lot of growing to do. So the concept of discipleship as a specific term had to grow for me very gradually over time. But, it did come up eventually. But it was some, in the American culture, I suppose really you can say in any culture in the world, discipleship is just not emphasized very much. Nobody aspires to be a disciple, hardly. Swamiji did. And we honored that. Even in the newspaper, we honored it. We would put ads in the newspaper on the anniversary of his discipleship, just because that was so incredibly unusual in this world. Everybody's aiming to be the guru, not the disciple of the guru. And Swamiji was more than content to be Master's disciple. It was the very definition of his being. So we follow right along in that track, and very blissfully so.
What do you think is the most important inner attitude of discipleship, and why? There are so many of them, and this is the beauty. For each one of us is one particular aspect that we feel that inner quality is important in discipleship, and why do you think that's important?
Well, I think for me, I would say perseverance and just never giving up. No matter how you fail or how you don't live up to your own expectations or anybody else's expectations. We try to overcome habits. We try to overcome negative attitudes. I mean, there's so much that we're working on all the time inside. It's easy to become discouraged. And as Swami used to give the example of, if you're washing a shirt in a basin, you push one part down and another part puffs up, and there's always something that's in your face when you're a disciple and trying to change. But I've never forgotten this wonderful little quip from Yogananda, and I'm sorry if it is offensive to anybody. It's pretty, but I love it. And Master said, "Be like the divine leech, though cut to pieces, keep hanging on." And that's what we have to do. Even if the storms of life are thrashing us, we still need to keep going, keep hanging on. If we quit, then it's over. And actually, not even then. If we quit, if we get back in the game, then we can keep going. But just never giving up is so important. If you're having a dry spell with meditations and your meditations are just awful, keep showing up. Keep getting in the chair. Just keep trying. And it's that way with every aspect of the path. You just have to never give up. As long as you're not giving up, there's hope.
I would say, the word that comes to my mind is attunement, and that's certainly something that Master and Swamiji emphasized. Master Swami tells us more so with the disciples, and Swamiji with all of us, but more specifically all of us who were more committed than just he wouldn't talk attunement to the public particularly, because I don't think he figured the public knew what the word meant. To this day, the word attunement is not in the dictionary. It's exactly. The stupid spell checker wants you to change it because it thinks it's not a word. It's like, come on, this is a really important word. Get it in there. But I'll also just segue onto what Nirmala was saying about it's really, really critical to show up. I'll just add to my little story about we all want that personal connection to the Guru, and the my own, you've come to me. That's like the romance of the devotee, the romance of the soul, and so we want that. But I'm going to compare discipleship to a marriage, a real marriage, not the image of a couple, sort of going through the motions. But romance is kind of, this thought just struck me yesterday because I was meditating on this topic a little bit. Romance is like the karma that you have brought with you into the beginning of the thing. It's what brought you together, in a sense. And so it's what created Bollywood and Hollywood. You wouldn't have it without,
Romance.
But romance is not marriage. Marriage is what happens after romance has led you to a difference of opinion. And now what are you going to do with that difference of opinion, or different point of view, or, different need in that moment, different desire in that moment? Marriage is what you build. Marriage is built on day to day to day, moment to moment to moment. Well, that's how discipleship is built, because discipleship is the deepest level of trust and connectedness. And you have to know what you are a disciple of and who you are a disciple of. You can't, it's not just sort of, cut and paste, and fill in. You can just fill out the form all the way down, cutting and pasting from somebody else. It's like, no, you have to know. It has to be in there on a deep, deep level. And that building requires showing up. And I'm going to, with your permission, even without your permission, Shurjo, I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story on Shurjo, everyone. This is Shurjo and discipleship in his way, and I want you to know that this is not a funny story. This has a very happy ending. But in our early days of Ananda in Pune, we were creating this community outside in the country, and it was wild. It was crazy. What we were trying to do was beyond impossible. It was like just from another galaxy. But we were really seriously trying to do it. And we all shifted out there, trying to get Swamiji's home together, trying to get Swamiji's house functional, trying to keep him, operating as a human being and serving as a disciple and serving a huge, it was just massively challenging undertaking. Shurjo was one of the monks, and the monks lived, about what would you say, a kilometer away, a half a kilometer. I mean, it was, many hundreds of meters away. And the phone coverage was very spotty. You never knew, if a call would go through or not. Shurjo always took my phone call. Even if I had to drag him out of sadhana, drag him out of bed, he took my phone call. And I was eternally grateful for that. And it occurred to me that in life, there are certain, and now did he take everybody's phone call all the time? I don't know. I don't know about these things, but I do know that he took my phone call, and he became self-selectingly an integral part of our lives, because he always, and he not only took the phone call, but then he would come and help with whatever it is. I mean, we had to chase a bat out of Swamiji's house one time, and oh my God, it's like, you get a call from Swamiji saying, Dharmadas, there's a bat in my bedroom. And it's, this thing is just swirling around. It's like, what? So, call Shurjo. Let's chase a bat out of Swamiji's bedroom. Anyway, it was lively. But so now bringing it back out of the personal and into the universal principle of the thing, we have to take Divine Mother's phone call. We have to take Master's phone call. And I am not putting myself in that position, by the way, just to be very, very clear. What I'm saying is that there's an element of willingness that's got to be there. And otherwise, Master moves on, and Swamiji would move on.
They call someone else.
They just call someone else. They're not gonna keep after you endlessly if you're not willing. And if you are willing, they will never stop asking you more, because then that's how you grow. That's how we grow. And so just, there's, as you all know, there are 1 million phone numbers out there. There's 1 billion phone numbers out there. They could all be calling you, and it would all be nonsense. They're all trying to sell you something. They're all trying to, whatever. But that one call, if you're listening for it, if you're waiting for it, if you're watching for it, when it rings, you say, yes, Master, I'm here. I'm ready. What can I do? How can I help? And that's the place we have to be inside. And that requires, yes, it requires willingness, but it requires attunement in the sense that we have to be listening. Because if we're not listening, that phone call goes by, that prayer, that response comes into our heart, but we were busy watching television or we were busy with something else. And then, God's still small voice is not going to scream at us, except under maybe very extraordinary circumstances. Most of the time, it's a still small voice. And if we're listening, we hear it. If we're not, we don't. So.
And if we take that call, that's where the joy is. That's where the fun is. we
That's
would,
where the challenge is too.
yeah. But we loved getting calls from Swami. We would wait for those calls. We would pounce on them because that was where the integration into his spiritual family was. And we wanted to say yes to life, as he would say. It was a great, great joy. The greatest joy of our lives was to have those phone calls.
So you've got the inner attitude. What about outwardly? What would you say has been an important act of discipleship for you? And also, let's put it a little bit into a context of perhaps a lot of people here with lives, some quite unlike ours in the sense we've got the opportunity really to be in the thick of it. But even being in the thick of it, you've got a lot of people in Ananda, and not everybody gets the same opportunity. What would you say has been the opportunity outwardly for you to really go deep into discipleship in ways that maybe you wouldn't have?
Well, I guess I would just reiterate the say yes to life attitude that Swami nurtured. I remember I was very involved in Swami's music for many years. And we had singing groups, and I was a choir director, and many tours going around to different places singing. And this was, shall we say, not always compatible with whoever my boss was at the time. They didn't really care for this very much. And I would, broach this issue with Swami and say, well, this isn't going over well at Earth Song or Mountain Song or wherever I was working at the time. And he would just say, where you put your energy is where the energy will respond to you. So keep doing what you love to do, what your heart is calling you to do, and the universe will support that. And I really gave my heart to the music. I really worked with it. I did it for years and years and years. So I think that's what helped me to just continue until finally I was working full-time for Ananda, and that's what I always wanted to do. So it was that attitude of following your guidance, following what Swami wanted me to do, following the attunement, following the joy, and always saying yes.
In fact, you bring out this beautiful concept of just Swami's music as an act of discipleship, and that itself is such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's also something that is incredibly available. Back in the day, there was hardly any printed music, let alone recorded music, let alone MP3 bass parts available on the website. I mean, we have literally been in Siberia and gone on that website and downloaded a piece of music or a part for, whatever, something that we could use like in 10 minutes from now to present to a satsang or some class or something. And I mean, that did not exist 40 years ago, I can tell you. I mean, it was like, it had to come up over many, many years. But so, just to add on to what Nirmala is saying, the music is just kind of one example. You can serve Swamiji's music just by listening to it, just by getting one of the MP3s and putting it in your phone, and when you're commuting to work or when you're walking around in the house, wear the earbuds and listen to that song and, hum it a little or learn the words a little and feel it in your heart. That alone is serving. But I'll just continue with the idea, because this is kind of a theme that Nirmala is expressing also, and it's very important that we explore. You know, Swamiji was always exploring how can I serve Master better? How can I serve more, reach a public that I've never reached before? And we don't necessarily have to think in those ways, because Swamiji has given us 100 different ways. I mean, the music is one, and it's a very beautiful and important one. But look at all the books that he wrote. Look at all the talks that he gave. Look at all the videos that he recorded, the photographs that he took. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And just to become familiar with those things is to have an incredible transformational experience. And so take the opportunity, and that's very self-selecting. How do we want to spend our time? We all know that the internet never ends. The television, you know, when I was a kid and would turn on the television at 5 a.m, it would just be those color bars. And then, you know, at 6 a.m, the national anthem would play. And then, you know, some program would start finally. And, you know, and I'd be sitting there tapping my toe, waiting for that program to start. Well, now it's 24/7, and there's no end to it. And all the nonsense that's on out there, you can just go get lost in it. You know, you can binge watch. Can you visualize Master or Swamiji binge watching anything? I mean, it's just like, it's just beyond comprehension. So we have to choose where we put our attention. But when we explore Master's teachings, the writings that Swamiji's done to help us gain a quicker access to Master's teachings and an access that's relevant to us in this day and age. Swami lived in India. Swami lived in Europe. He lived in America. He showed us how to operate on 3 continents, spoke 9 languages, lectured in 5. I mean, it's like the guy tried to reach everyone in some kind of way. We can all explore that and follow that. And then to actually serve his work in some way, to me, that's the real piece of discipleship.
Yeah.
You know, the guru comes to us for our salvation, yes, but we can't receive that salvation very completely until we've given something to the Master's mission. And it's a debt of gratitude, and it's a debt of joy. It's not a heavy burden. It's a gift. And you know, that gift of our heart that we give, then the Master can come and fill it up even more. So to me, it's about service and devotion and just that willing participation in exploring the path and diving deeper and deeper.
Well, if you love, you want to serve. It's not even an issue of willingness. It's just natural and springs from your heart, and you would just do anything. So if we get into that flow, then it's all joy.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel already so inspired at all the points and concepts, and I'm sure our people are now integrating in a deeper level. I mean, coming from someone who has spent 40 years serving and changing himself, herself, and constantly, you know, understanding what's attunement all about, because as you guys know, no one really teaches how to do that. You kind of need to figure out along the way. Like, no one teaches you how to become a mother or a husband or a wife. You just keep learning, you know, in the journey itself. So I feel really inspired with what you guys are sharing. And I think we have one last question.
It's essentially, if you would share a personal story of yours with Swamiji, both where perhaps he revealed to you an important aspect of discipleship, of the spiritual path, or anything you felt like, wow, that was like
or a turning point.
Yeah, that shifted something quite drastic in you?
Well, there was a time in India, we were living in our first house. So Swami had the top floor, and the rest of us were in all over the rest of the house. There were people. There was a couple living under the stairway, in a little cubby under the stairs. But that was Ananda India. That one house was Ananda India. And Swami was not well. He really struggled with his health a lot, and we had turned the top floor terrace, sort of the roof of the house and the terrace, into a hall for people to come, and we were doing an evening program outside on the terrace. And we had plants up there and an altar and a chair for Swami, and he didn't feel well enough to do the program. He was just really unwell. So he was talking to us about, what should I do? Should I have you guys do the program and I'll just go to bed? And we said, Swami, we'd be happy for you to go to bed and we'll just take care of it. But he thought for a moment, and he thought, no, I have to do this. Do you remember, was it Master's birthday?
Mahasamadhi.
It was Master's Mahasamadhi, so it was March. And he went out there. He could barely walk. He gave the most beautiful evening program of our lives. It was just exceptionally mystical. And meanwhile, the sun had set, and this beautiful, beautiful pink moon rose right behind Swami, like in blessing. It was just extraordinarily beautiful. And it wasn't a new thing, but it was a reinforcement of what I had seen over and over and over through the years of, he didn't feel well, he was tired, he was exhausted, and he had to put out more energy. He had to go to the next level and draw in Master's strength and Master's vibration so he could go out there again. Many were the times I wheeled him in a wheelchair to the stage, just praying that he could make it. And he would stride out onto the stage, he would stand there for 2 hours, and everybody else would think, well, Nirmala, what are you talking about? He's tired. He's not tired. And then I'd put him back in the wheelchair and take him back. But just that tremendous love for Master that nothing would stop him.
From that same time frame, early in our days at Ananda India, Swamiji had just finished writing the book Conversations with Yogananda, and we had literally just minutes before gotten the files ready to send to the printer to be printed. And Swamiji had been wanting to take a vacation.
We were in America at this point.
Well, no, I mean, at that point we were in India. We had already landed up in India.
Oh, okay.
So, and literally got the files ready to send off to be printed, the book now. And we had arranged to go to Kerala, to Kochi, with Jyotishan Devi and Swamiji. And so we flew down, 3-hour flight, whatever, from Delhi, and landed up down there, got to the hotel. It's a full day's travel to do all that. We finished the day, had dinner. We all went to bed fairly early. And along about 6 or 7 in the morning, I want to say, the phone rang, and Swamiji said, Dharmadas, and Swamiji had not brought his computer on this trip. This was how determined he was to rest. For him to leave his computer behind meant, now we're resting. Like, this is like a requirement. And so without his computer, he calls down, Dharmadas, will you bring your computer up? Okay, sure, fine. So I go to his room with my computer, and he had woken up at 3 a.m. feeling that Master wanted him to reorganize the work of Ananda. And he wasn't going to go back to sleep on that. So he got up. He had no computer. He had little stationery like they leave next to the bed in the hotel. So on the hotel stationery, which is like the size of a napkin, he starts handwriting all the inspiration that's coming to him for the Ananda
Way of Awakening.
Way of Awakening. Is that what it was called?
I think so.
Where we wore yellow.
The way of the Ananda Sangha.
The Way of Ananda
Way of-
Sangis.
yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And so he had all these little pages of notes. He said, all right, well, let me use your computer. I'll type it. Because of course reading his handwriting was challenging. And he knew that I would never do it. He thought Nirmala might be able to. But anyway, so he tried with my computer, but of course my keyboard was different. My computer was a Mac, his computer was a PC. I mean, he was very frustrated. So then I typed the rest of the manuscript out. But I was so touched and impressed. Here he's come to this place for a rest. Immediately in the morning, Master gives him an inspiration. And it totally shifted the way we approached the work of Ananda. And it was like, we have to think bigger. We have to think broader. We have to think deeper. He even gave the kind of seeds of the Nayaswami order in that, because he talked about the various monastic orders and just the concepts of how to take our lives deeper and at the same time reach out to a much, much broader world. Anyway, I was just so amazed and moved by the fact that, he didn't roll over and go back to sleep. It's like Master gave him an inspiration. He stayed up the rest of the night working on it. I mean, anyway, that was
our Swami.
That was our Swami. And I just, yeah, very.
And he somehow seems to be doing the same
Yeah.
as you guys were saying, but for those who learn how to listen, he's constantly now calling, he needs now more help than even before.
Yeah.
Now is the need
Yeah.
of the hour.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good for us to remind ourselves that the key ingredient here is just to open ourselves and say yes and try to see what is that call all about.
Yeah. Just to address, this was a consciousness that we would run into in India a lot, and anywhere, I suppose, but especially in India. Okay, I'm a householder. I'm a wife. I have children. I have a household to keep track of. I'm a husband. I have work, business, many obligations. How can I follow this path? How can I be a disciple? How can I serve? And just realize that even your own experience, in fact, especially your own experience, that's the laboratory for discipleship. You are, or you can be an example of how this is done. Lahiri Mahashaya was an accountant. It doesn't get more kind of mundane than that. He was just a worker in an office, and yet his consciousness was way, way up here. Whether that is your life or it isn't, find a way to serve in your way that opens your own heart so that Master's blessing touches other people. Every one of us, every single one of us who has had Kriya, who has had discipleship, we have all experienced some blessing, some deep and profound blessing. Help someone else to feel the joy, the peace, the divine love, whatever it is that you felt. And it doesn't even, this was something Swamiji was so gifted at. He could be talking to the waiter in a restaurant, the man selling him something in some little store someplace, in Italy, in Spain, in France, in India, wherever. He was never going to make a Kriyaban out of that person, but somehow he could help that person to feel joy or to feel some inspiration. He was always trying to give that to people. So, everyone. So in your life, just look all around us. We live in a world full of people who long for that, and they don't know how to find it. Yes, of course, the ones who are interested and willing, fine, help them to understand what is this path. But others just help them to feel joy or peace. And that alone is a huge gift. And that allows Master to flow through us even more. So I see the chat line lit up several times. Is there anything we should...
There are one or two things that could go on forever.
Okay.
I think we have ended in a very beautiful
Okay.
high note.
But we'll keep some of these questions, and hopefully we'll have opportunities to keep connecting more often. And
Okay.
kind of allow people, perhaps another time we'll just have an open session and just have people kind of shoot at you their bullets of questions.
Okay.
And we hope this will be the beginning of many more.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Many different subjects. I mean, you guys have so much to offer and to share.
Well,
And
thank you all. Is there, Shurjo and Narayani, is there a way we could actually see everybody for just a minute?
No, unfortunately, this is the webinar format. And
Oh, okay. All right. Well then,
there are like 45 people here.
45 people, and people are saying thank you so much.
Well,
The beautiful explanation. So glad to see Nirmala and Dharmadas. Beautiful chant. So
much to reflect upon.
Thank you so much. And they will keep writing.
We send you all our love. God bless every one of you.
yeah.
Thank you. God bless you all, and please give our love, all of Ananda Mumbai devotees' love to everybody in Ananda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you all.
God bless you. Have a fabulous day ahead.
Thank you, Jai Guru.
Get a good night's sleep.
Rest in God. Make a bonfire of divine joy tonight in your heart. Okay. Put it all in there. God bless you all.
Love to you.
Love to you both.